Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. This podcast episode discusses the details of domestic violence. Some listeners might find this traumatizing and triggering. Do not listen to this podcast if you feel you may be triggered in any way. If this episode becomes triggering while you are listening, practice self-care and turn off the episode. If you need to talk to someone, you can reach out to your local crisis line or the website thehotline.org or their phone number 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. All the links are provided in the show notes. Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. On today's podcast, we are bringing back Rachel to the podcast. She shared her story and ongoing battle with the court system and seeking justice for her children in episodes 132 and 133. We're going to get an update on Rachel's case, as well as talk to Maria, a mom also seeking justice and protection for her children who are now living with their abuser. We know it's not easy to listen to stories of abuse, but I encourage you to listen so that these cases can be exposed to the wrong that is being done, which directly puts children at risk for abuse in all forms, and not only puts the children's lives in danger, but causes the children to be isolated from their mother. We listen to their stories so we can stand with them in the fight against court corruption and to seek accountability in the court system. So welcome back to the show, Rachel, and welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here.
We're glad you're here.
And thank you for taking the time and the bravery to share your stories of abuse, as we know this isn't easy. Continuing with part 2, where are your children currently living?
Yeah, so my kids are currently with their father, probably maybe like 15 minutes down the road from me.
Yeah, and what actions have you taken to fight the custody? Did you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I've done everything they've asked of me and more. Like I've done parenting, I've written essays. I have done parenting classes, one that they order you to do, but then I've probably done another 10 on my own accord. I have done the supervised parenting. Again, there's not one thing negative about me. I have submitted to any psychological evaluation that they have asked of me. Anything that they've asked of me, I've been willing to do. It literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. You can never earn your children back. We've said so because you've spoken out against us.
You described various issues with DCS and that no proper investigation was done by the Peoria police, and medical provider reports were dismissed on top of the children's ongoing disclosures. Medical providers expressed their own concern that the children are not safe with their father. These issues, along with others, allowed your children to be further abused by their father. And you did share a little bit on that, didn't she?
Yeah, I think
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, though, I could say a little bit more about that.
Okay, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so DCS did not do any investigation. They have admitted that over and over. Basically, they have told me that they will not do anything because it's part of their guidelines that if there is one protective parent, it is their job and responsibility to go to family court and do something about it. So regardless, that they will find majority of their cases as unsubstantiated, and that is what family court's basing it on, and placing the kids with their abusers, DCS will not do anything. And if you just look at the DCS statistics that come out semi-annually in June of each year, it would be easy to see that almost all of the cases come back that way. All of them are unsubstantiated. So are we saying that every single child here is lying and that nobody should be protected? There's like 7,000, the statistics are just disgusting. The 7,000 cases a year, or not even a year, 6 months, and 160 of that are what's substantiated. And that's what family court is basing these decisions on. It just blows your mind. And then if we're going to take it a step further, is that only 1% of sexual abuse is prosecuted. And that's including children. So that's not a good basis for family court to decide, oh, these kids should stay with their abuser after they just spoke out about it. It's like, it's unfathomable what's even happening.
Yeah.
And how. And then on top of it, with Peoria police, it took them over a year to write a report about sexual abuse of a minor. A year. Anytime I would follow up about it, it would be like, oh, it's in a pile of papers to be worked on. It's in a pile of papers. I had to meet with the sergeant multiple times in order to get a report written about this. But yet, that's what family court is basing their decisions on. So how does any of this make sense? How are none of these people or agencies speaking to one another in family court? But then when you call DCS and ombudsman, they're saying, oh, they do. Judges call all the time. But then when I'm on the record, I have it saying judges say, no, we won't do that. We will not call DCS to see what's going on. That's your job to do that and provide it to us. So which one is it? You're getting conflicting information all around. And unfortunately, you know that a lot of these places are meant to help, but they're all guiding people to do the wrong thing. It's just awful.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's enough being done to protect the children and to, do a good investigation. So I know, and reading your case, I mean, it was horrendous to read and to know how the court-appointed advisor made a report to the court, including multiple false statements about you and accused you of portraying your own issues on the children. You said she never interviewed your children, yet was an advisor to the court. Did you want to say any more about that?
That is correct. Yeah. So she lied also. So if we even talk about like father lying about the children's attendance, so did the CAA. So she just kind of mirrored anything father would tell her and parrot that. Would do no investigation on her own. She never met the children. She met with me by phone and by father by phone. That's it. He's never given her any pictures, video of his house. She's never seen it. She even admitted on the stand that she would not even know who my kids were if they walked by her. She never talked to the school resource officer who also called in to 911 about his own concerns because my daughter was also emailing and everything to school when all this stuff initially happened. She did not call any medical providers, nothing. She did nothing. She's not reviewed any of his mental health reports because he has a significant amount of his own mental health history that's really concerning. He has a whole history of suicidal ideation, of consistently saying he's going to kill himself, checking himself into the mental hospital. But yet the court doesn't find any of that as a concern. None of it. I'm the one who's got mental health concerns because I've reported abuse. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, even having a medical provider state, what they were seeing, you think would be enough to have them have an investigation.
Yeah. One of the judges dismissed the facts that the father had lied and seemed to have a biased attitude against you in the times he presided over your court hearings. He made his own conclusions of alienation and coaching despite not one medical provider, DCS worker, or police report ever documenting they had concerns. Your own parental rights were violated by this judge. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, my parental rights have definitely been violated. We have a right to be able to parent our own children, protected under the 14th Amendment. That has just been totally ignored. It doesn't matter what I do. The court has just deemed that I am not deserving of my children because I've reported abuse of them, and then I have spoken up against the court. But more so, I feel like the biggest really issue is that children don't have any right to safety. They have zero rights to be safe from harm. It doesn't really matter. It's almost like a child can speak up and say, hello, this is what's happening to me. And anybody that's treating these children can say, listen, this is what's happening to this child. And yet none of them are believed and disregarded because they're not the ones getting the paycheck from the court. But the people who are getting the paycheck from the court are not seeing or treating the children to be able to have any sort of valid say in the matter. It's really unbelievable that children are really just a piece of property, and unfortunately so are women. It seems like it's just really discouraging. Yeah.
And that's Karen's next comment was it kind of comes back to where they keep saying that people are coaching the kids.
Yeah.
And that's where I believe kids need to have they need to allow kids to have a voice. I mean, your daughter's old enough that she should have been taken seriously.
Absolutely. And how would they know if she was being coached if none of them have talked to her? You're like, how are you even coming to that assumption when you've never even spoken to her?
Yeah, and she's 15, right? So at that time,
no, she's 17 now. That was, it's already been.
Listen to her. That's
what was so just to me concerning is that they didn't even interview her, which you think that would be a priority, in their situation. Yeah, you also said per DCS guidelines, in the event there was ever concern of coaching, that DCS would have implemented a supervised parenting plan for 60 days and reassess the situation. And you said
Yes.
DCS never did such a thing because there was never any concerns of you coaching the children, and you willingly submitted to a mental health evaluation, provided character letters, and did all that you could to show that you did not coach your children. This seems to be a recurring theme, and I know, when we talked to Rachel, there was that theme as well. Did you or Maria or Rachel want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a reoccurring theme. Those guidelines are what actually helped me get off of supervised visitation. So I've been trying to share that with any parent I know. If there's any parent that's going through this and they've been placed on supervised visitation, find your state's guidelines for DCS, for CPS. Proof. If there was any concerns about you, they would have implemented something. And if the courts found nothing against us, we're not unfit, we aren't emotionally damaging to our children, we aren't physically harming our kids, there's no basis for the court to be removing them from us like this. None.
Right.
I think that it's also important to take note of the fact that there are no rules and guidelines within the family court system. I mean, they are acting as a totalitarian system in which they can make their own rules. We have licensed providers who have assessed the children and have noted that these children are not coached. Specifically, even in my case, the DCS worker assigned said she had special training, and she said, these children are not coached. I have no concern. I've been in this field for many years. I've taken additional training. I've moved up, and there are no concerns whatsoever. And her saying that she was discounted. We have, if even a court-appointed official does not align with what the court wants, they will discount them. We had a BIA in our case who said, no, these children are abused. They are, believable. Their story has not changed. They've not, one iota. These children are in distress, and she was discounted. We have therapists who are discounted to licensed therapists who have the ability to actually diagnose. They're looking at the mothers. They're looking at the children, giving diagnoses that are indicative of the abuse the children have suffered, and they are being discounted. So it's very unusual in all of our cases, in Maria's case, in my case, in the case of so many others. The people who gave us these diagnoses are not therapists. The people who say that there are some type of psychosis or borderline personality disorder, narcissism, anything, these are the judges. The judges are saying mom's a narcissistic personality disorder. Mother has this disorder. The lawyers for the father. Oh, mother has a manic depressive. Now these people have no ability to diagnose, but they are able to, and their word alone is damning to these mothers and these children. It's a crazy and very unusual and slippery slope. It's also very important, I think, to note the fact that the annual reports that come out by the America's Health Rankings have placed Arizona as the worst state in the nation in which children face 2 or more adverse childhood experiences. And so what that really says is that includes various forms of child abuse and neglect, as well as living with a parent who has a substance abuse issue or a mental health problem. So this is so unusual and very indicative of what's going on within the court system that Arizona is placed dead last.
Wow. That speaks volumes.
Well, it says in your case information that you filed a motion to the court ordering for the court-appointed advisor to interview the children, as she nor the best interest attorney have never met your children, spoke to them, or interviewed them, yet the motion was denied. And you already talk about this in your story. On 6/23 of this year, you received final rulings stating that you only had 2 hours of parenting time a week. You were ordered to take a psychological evaluation at your own expense if you wanted to request any more parenting time. This is so horrible and outrageous. And how have your visits with the kids been since all this transpired?
Yeah, so, our visits have been like this for a little while. I feel like everybody was hopeful that things would be returning to normal. So I feel like there was more of like a hopeful type of energy versus now a lot more confusion, Our visits are always good with each other just because we all cherish our time with one another. I feel like even more than previously.
I can't even imagine.
But it's just never enough time. Literally you get to do what? What can you do in 2 hours? Nothing. You can't do anything. And, he won't let me talk to them on the phone because they didn't spell that out in the court order. So, when you're dealing with somebody who's just using the children to try to hurt you to begin with, it's just always something. It's like a constant line of abuse. I get constant barrage of emails from him that are just attacking me, telling me how I need to get help. I need to get mental health help. Anytime I ask to have a call with the kids, literally anything I ask. If I ask to talk to the kids, I'm crazy. You're like, okay.
Just manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, but I've already given you my psych eval that told you I'm not. So why don't you take one?
Yeah. How's your
So-
daughter doing in her mental health state? She said she's 17 now.
Yeah, my daughter is 17. She is counting down the days until she turns 18. I feel like she is right now. I feel like she goes through waves. I feel like right now she's becoming a little bit more withdrawn and down. I feel like she's probably anxious about turning 18 and what is going to transpire at that point with her leaving and coming back home, and how that's going to play out with her brothers, because right now she is their primary caretaker. She has had to step up significantly because he doesn't really care about taking care of them. So without her there, I feel like she just carries a lot of weight on her, unfortunately. That
How old are the boys?
my boys, my youngest is going to be 8, actually this next week. And then my middle son is 9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I think it's just still stressful for her. She's still trying to be a kid.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
does she turn 18?
In February.
Okay.
In
So,
February, yeah.
oh my goodness.
So it's just a lot. It's a lot for her. She has been in one thing that has been, I feel like, for her has been super beneficial is that she has been in counseling throughout this whole time, because that was part of the stipulation for the hospital to release her. That has been a safety net in a sense, to an extent.
Yeah.
Because it's somewhere where she can at least check in. That's actually where a lot of these medical providers, they started advocating for her because of their experiences and what was happening and what they were witnessing themselves. So I don't know, it was beneficial for her. And I feel like that has been very helpful to her throughout this time.
Yeah, I'm glad she's able to get counseling.
Yeah. That's like when we interviewed Lundy Bancroft. He talked about, on a side note, we talked about, I stayed with my ex who was a sociopath, and because I knew every time I thought of leaving that we would just be dragged through the courts like this, and he would make up lies and get full custody of the kids. That was my biggest fear. So I stayed. But now my kids are 26, 23, and 21, and they struggle so much. They're all in therapy. It's all bad. It's just when you're with an abusive person with the children, no matter what, it's always just so hard on them, no matter what decision you make.
It really is. And I've
And
thought that myself all the times about,
You would hope courts would be helpful and do the right thing, but these men, they lie. So.
And they just get away with it no matter how much it's proven. Like, you're like, okay, but here's school records for my daughter saying she never dropped out. You actually picked her up from school. She's got hospital records saying she's not doing any drugs and she's not sexually active. You've said on the stand you never tried to get the children. So I couldn't have withheld the kids for time you didn't try to ever get. But yet I'm the horrible parent. And yet he was able to withhold them from me 5 months with me actively making an effort. I was sending emails. I was going to the park every single week. Every Saturday, I would go to the park and sit there for 2 hours waiting in case they showed up, because it's like I didn't ever want them to show up and me not be there. And it's like there'd be times I felt like such an idiot, like just sitting there and watching all of these people with their children, hoping that mine would come.
Yeah, I can't even.
And it was so hard, but it's like I would never want them to show up one day and then me not be there, because I feel like that's such a big fear that a lot of us parents have, is that they're already telling them anything they want about us, and we can't say anything at all to defend ourselves or explain why all of a sudden they've been ripped from their protective parent. And the children who are older can understand more, but when they're young,
Right.
they don't know. They can't understand why that is. My 6-year-old, he was 6 years old. He doesn't understand.
I didn't know they were that young. We talked about on the first one with Rachel, how Lundy talked about the corrupt judges too.
Yeah.
A lot of them are narcissists.
Yeah,
So
there's
not
just
all
not
of them, but
there needs to be accountability for sure. I mean, I just, that fathoms me that there's no accountability for the judge. I mean, everyone needs to have some kind of accountability, because, I mean, if you get a narcissistic judge or something, then that's.
Yeah, no oversight at all is the thing. And then once that it is too, is that it's almost like no one wants to overrule anybody else. And if you had a judge and now you're having a commissioner, they can't overrule the judge that was above them. It creates a whole cycle of politics within it. There needs to be oversight and accountability. That can't just be, you got to do whatever you want to do and whatever mood you're in that day, or whoever rubbed you the wrong way. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's what Bancroft said as well. He said, when we asked him about it, he said to follow the money trail, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so profound because, as Maria just stated, in every other branch of the government, in every other court, there's a check and balance system. In criminal court, there's a check and balance system. The criminals, they could see you commit the crime and you are still innocent to presume guilty. And there is still oversight to make sure the commissioner, that anyone dealing with you dealt with you in the appropriate manner. You are still entitled to have a jury, a trial by jury of your peers to be able to make sure that everything is equitable. But such is not so only in the family court system. Everything is discretionary and in the hands of a judge who can make the ruling not based on any rules that are in place. Because the thing of it, I think is so important, is that it's not that the rules are not there. The rules are there, but they're discretionary. They're if you want to follow them. In both of our cases, there has been history of domestic violence. So as it relates to Arizona codes and guidelines, the parent who committed the domestic violence should not be able to get equal custody, equal parenting time, final decision making. But the judges are saying, you know what, this is what it says, but I have the discretion and I choose to do this. And I think that that's so scary because there's no oversight.
Right.
Cosmetologists have oversights. They have a board they have to answer to. If they cut your hair too short, they put the wrong chemical, they can lose their license. Yeah. But when it comes to our children, there is no oversight. A judge can make any determination, and time again, these children are being killed. And the only thing the judge is being told is, hey, that child you ruled on, that child got killed. Oh, well, whatever. Back to my game. And then that judge, the very next week in the Grayson Martin case, the judge was made aware of the fact that he made a ruling that ultimately ended that little boy's life. He was made aware of that, and the very next week he received an award for Judge of the Year. And he accepted that award knowing that that little boy's funeral had not even taken place.
Wow.
Yeah,
because there should be definitely accountability, like especially when there's so much evidence. Like that's another thing that Lundy Bancroft was saying is he was seeing cases where anyone that could see there's evidence, but they're not, the judges weren't ruling on, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm glad at the beginning you mentioned some of those groups that there's more going on and people are speaking up and having a voice, because this is so important. Any one last thought or something you think is really important that each of you want to add before we wrap up?
I would say that it is so absolutely imperative for us to unify and to not have our voices to be muffled. I think that's so important. Maria has stated something earlier when we had spoken, and it really touched my soul. She said, up until this point, her daughter, who will be 18 soon, had been hopeful and said, when I turn 18, I can get out and I'll advocate for my brothers. And we now learned that within the family court system here, when a child did that most recently, in fact, the judge who ruled on her case said, well, based on the fact that you have come against us, now you cannot see your brother anymore. So it's so important for us to really take back the power and to push through. That's my last thought on it.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with Rachel so much. And, we just really appreciate the opportunity that you're giving us to share our story and our mission to make a change and to try to help protect children, because while we're suffering, they are the ones who are ultimately suffering, and they are just being dealt a lifetime of trauma that shouldn't be happening. No children should have to go through this, especially when they have a safe, loving parent. They should not be ripped from them. We just have to change it. And so we just have to continue to unite and come together and get loud, make our voices heard, and, work as a team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your story on the podcast. Our hearts as mothers are with you, and we stand with you against the failures that have been done. And we ask our listeners to get involved with the Arizona Parents Against Court Corruption. They do have a Facebook page, like Rachel said, and bring these things to light for the change that is needed and accountability. So I just thank you so much, Rachel and Maria, for sharing your story. We're going to continue to pray for you guys, and our hearts are just with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being so brave.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. We're just so grateful you all for this opportunity to speak out, and this is just such a blessing to us. And we just thank God for your work, because this truly is a game changer for so many of us. As I mentioned,
she heard about the podcast, the lady.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Like, we shared it, and that's what is supposed to happen. The truth will set you free. And I really am like that's what we're at. Like, the truth will set you free. At this point, so many of us have lost our children. Maria, I, several other people. So what are you going to threaten us with now? Are you going to if you don't stop talking, I'm going to come to your house and cut your leg off? Like, you already took my kids.
Yeah. But it was actually helpful that she brought that up at court, right?
I believe it was very helpful, because
okay.
Ultimately, what's going to happen by her bringing it up and not only audibly stating it, but by her actually putting it in her report. and like, taking screenshots of it, I think that that's going to be very telling. The fact that you, by your own admission, inadvertently be it, admitted that this is a conflict of interest and that you were appointed to be a visitation supervisor to ensure continuity of care and appropriate interactions between me and my children. But instead of doing that, you voluntarily decided to be a private investigator. And that's what you decided to do. So that's very telling of their intentions. So I'm not concerned. I'm grateful. We're ready to push forward.
Yeah. That's exactly what Lundy Bancroft said to do too, because we were asking him about a lot of these cases. So he's worked with the court system. He's worked with abusive men, so he understands how they work. And he's done a lot of advising with the court system. So he wrote his last book. I don't know if he's had a book out since then, but his last book was actually a novel, and it's about how a mom had to flee with her child because that's, the only choice she had. And he made it a novel because he thought, because it's a good book. It's well written. It's a thriller. You want to know what's going to happen. And so he's hoping that people would read it, as a novel and then be educated while they're reading it. And he was hoping to kind of make that a series, but I don't know if
we have a trailer and it's number 60 and 61, podcast 60 and 61. It's called In Custody with Lundy Bancroft.
Yeah, that's the name of his book. It's the novel, In Custody.
We're going to listen to it. Definitely. Thank you so very much.
Yes,
Yeah, let us know what you think of those two, because those are phenomenal podcasts, everything he says.
Yeah.
I'll have to listen to it.
And he's passionate about it too. He's like,
I know.
mad on there. So you're going to love it. All right. Well, thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you both.
Bye-bye. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.